all over the place. I hope you're ready to go walking, trolloping through fields, right? Um, uh, so you know how sometimes I say, I got when I'm going, especially in the beginning here, when I'm going all over the place, I say, I'm kind of just building a quilt, don't worry about it, you know. And it's just a quilt, and by the end, it might actually all the little patches of quilt work might come together into a pattern, right? And then there are other times where I say we're stringing beads together. Have you ever heard me talk about that? Stringing beads. And where like we're threading through different beads. So today it more so they're related images, but today we're really got a big pile of beads and we got like some thread and we're gonna start putting beads on this thing, right? And one caveat, I grew up with my mom, who's an artist, and she always taught me about color in interesting ways where she, you know, colors that, you know, I could tell you all the beads are going to be shades of the same color. But one of the things my mom showed me early on, well, I don't know how she just it imprinted me early on, is that if you look at the color wheel, you know, like they don't always have to be close related to each other. They can be opposites on the wheel, but they actually work together because there are certain places and colors that go together in ways that are unexpected. And that's when you really get someone who's a good with color, is they can start making colors go together that you don't expect. And they work because it's not just happenstance. So with that being said, here comes a necklace or a friendship bracelet, right? All right. So uh oh, I forgot to pull up a line from a song too. All right. So there's this really good documentary. I think it's on Netflix still. It's called My Octopus Teacher. And it's visually beautiful, even if you don't even, you know, even if it whatever, right? If you get, but it's just, and it's about an underwater photographer that kind of befriends, I'm not say kind of, I'd say has like a wonderful relationship with an octopus. Octopuses only live for just over a year. And so it's a relationship. He goes and visits every day. Maybe it's 2 years or something. And he goes and it's about this unfolding relationship, right? That happens between this underwater photographer and this octopus. And it's called My Octopus Teacher, which is like, and one of the big lines of it, and I don't think it's necessarily a spoiler alert, but at the very end, there's a line that really struck me about being with this octopus made him realize that he wasn't just he always thought of himself as an observer of nature, of what he was filming underwater. And that relationship made him realize that he wasn't an observer, he was part of the nature. And that we forget that as we think we're observing, right? Which is quite an important, deep realization, right? And here's a quick leap out to a funny color bead. I'm really curious about what it means to become a pure observer in a yoga pose. So that's a stray bead coming right in the middle, right? Okay. And that you're part of it. Okay. So I'm 13 years old and I wake up from the coma and I get well enough to be able to be told what's happened to me. And you know, there's so many things going on, and it's a couple weeks into it, probably maybe even a month, when I'm finally being able to process what I'm being told. And the world that's getting handed to me doesn't match up with what I'm experiencing, right? They're not quite, it's like, and I'm only 13, so I don't have a lot of language and I don't have, a whole bunch of stuff. And so I don't, haven't had all the years of thinking about consciousness. And so I'm like, and part of me objects, but then part of me acquiesces and tries to live in the world that was the conception of what my mind-body relationship was and what my level of sensation was. And I'm handed this world, right? And something in me doesn't, in waking, I call it the lucky frog, right? But something doesn't quite match up. But I acquiesce and I enter the world, right? That was laid out to me about what was possible, not possible, which at that moment probably is the beginning of mind-body solutions. Is that starting to contemplate the world that was handed, the conception of sensation and presence that was handed to me in that early times. And the one I tried to make work for 12 years. And you've all heard that story, overcoming, and kind of the story we all inherited, a lot of us, when it comes to having a disability, and you try to keep up and all that stuff. And so with that, and a lot of what we've done and what I've been working on for ever since, in a lot of ways, but especially since I started yoga, is like, wait, what was the other world that I could hear? Could only hear it as a faint whisper. It wasn't like normal sensation, but that other world was here, or there are other worlds here, right? So back to a yoga pose, right? To feeling, we all inherit an easy view of our body, the thing that can pick things up and set things down, and muscle flexion and all this stuff. And, that's the obvious world, right? For sure. So it's like, and that makes sense because the mind thinks it's in control, and it's actually, and it can make things happen and have sensations come in and not come in. But what about all the visual field that's out my window that I'm not actually able to have my mind process? What about all the other levels of things that are happening that, in fact, to have a mind at all, my mind is having to narrow a whole bunch of things down, right? So all that's happening all the time. All the time. The world that we all live in and share with each other is a world that's constructed out of habits, right? The things we take in as sensation, things that are practical. I mean, if I don't learn a habit to drink my water, I'm just watching Audrey drink a cup of water, a couple of tears. Like, I don't have this habit, I'm probably not going to make it, right? There are habits that actually, but like the whole world you and I live in together is, coming through from habits. And sometimes I think of autistic people as, when I've worked with them, is that their series of habits of making order of the world is not the same world of habits that we have. And so they have a hard time fitting in, right? The way that they're processing information, they don't have the same filters, right? So their habits, they're not able to find the human domain of habits that allow for social interaction, right? It's not just autistic. I mean, all that stuff. So again, I'm still working back towards the observer, right? So, and being part of it. So here's where another sounds like a really abstract stray bead is coming in, right? Is that there's a great song by Coldplay. It's called Clocks, right? And one of the last lines, or the last line, is a question, am I part of the cure? Am I part of the disease? And the disease is a realization of you are. So the chorus in the background is you are, and he's becoming aware of, in the song, for various reasons. You listen to a song, it's clever lyrics, it's good. The song's got a great feel to it, by the way. But the extra realization of awareness, is that going to help us? Or is that part of the disease of our ending? Okay, and that's a really interesting, that's a song to check out, by the way, the lyrics of it, and especially the refrain. It's a weird version of kind of existential awareness. So the deepening awareness of what's happening. So if you go back to the octopus teacher, and science, it's very powerful. Science has thought that maybe it can separate itself from the world and observe it and find patterns, right? But not participate in it all the way, right? And they're finding that that's not even possible with the collapsing wave function and all this stuff that you can't, Heisenberg's principle, uncertainty principle, we're making the wave functions collapse all the time by our observations, right? So we are, by some very deep level that the octopus showed this photographer, that no, you're actually part of what's happening, right? Is that, so there's a difference between, I've tried to write this like 7 times over the last 20 years. The difference between knowledge, awareness, and realization. So knowledge is kind of that thing about here's how it goes, and it gives us control over the world and stuff. That's a practice type of awareness. And it tends to conform to the world and reveals something to us, maybe, but it also limits the world, right? Not everything of our experience will ever be knowledge, right? So if you make knowledge be our lens for the universe, we actually eliminate a lot of it, of our experience, right? And then you got realization, right? Which is something that I believe a lot in, but then there's just awareness. When does awareness become realization, and does it have to become knowledge? And so these should be separate categories. So we're about to get back to the yoga pose and starting yoga now, right? The emptiness that we all carry within, which I'm trying to tell you, is part of the key to having sensation through neurological deficit. Okay. That level of awareness, when you start to become aware of what you've lost and your mind gets fixated on it, that's going to determine whether your awareness is part of the cure or part of the disease. Right? So the mind will take the potential of empty space, this is my belief now, and make it inorganic and make it part of the disease. The question is, can you take that same awareness and realize, not know, you don't get to know, and realize that it's alive? And it starts with becoming aware of it. So there was an exchange between Zoe. I told you this is going to be a string of beads, right? I swear to God, these are all energetically related. So when I string beads, I'm led by an energy that I can feel is similar, but the contexts go all over the place. There was an exchange a couple of weeks ago about Shavasana and melancholy. And when you're in Shavasana, which is paradoxically and ironically called corpse pose, and you're getting really quiet, and you're getting nourishment because you're quiet, instead of that adding to the deadening sensation, does that create a levitating sensation? And the answer is, it depends on the student. It depends on the human. Sit up straight and tall. Start to feel more rather than less. So I can't imagine, in my opinion, I know people think if you had to pick one limb of the 8 limbs of yoga, you'd pick meditation. I honestly can't imagine yoga without asana, because why wouldn't you bring it back to here? Right? Why wouldn't you bring it back through the body? Seems to me we're failing as human beings if we don't try to bring realization back through the body. If someone goes off in a cave, there's a great documentary called The Tibetan Yogis. Oh my God, if you want to watch that, but a lot of them are off into caves their entire life. And it's only cool if they go off in the cave their entire life and come back and teach us. Right? Because it needs to come back through the body. At least that's why I'm here, right? Because I'm going to take whatever I can of my experience and try to bring it back to living, right? And so I'm just not going to meditate the rest of my life, although I'd probably get farther if I just stopped talking to people. I don't know. So I'm leaning forward right now because I need to start my base. This has been quite a string of beads for a necklace for me today. And so I need to ground. So I'm slightly coming forward on my sitting bones. I'm putting my forearms as if I'm preparing for headstand. I'm getting onto my forearms. I'm making sure I pay attention to my bones. So I'm starting my centering totally different now. I want my bones to be part of my centering. Remember, you get to choose all the different ways you want to center. You don't always have to do it the same way. Do it the way we usually do it a lot, but I'm doing it a different way because I need my bones today, not the ether, not just the ether. I've already been in the ether this morning. Right? So I'm going to be forward on my sitting bones, knowing that I'm leaning into life here because I want to be part of the cure, the awareness to be part of the cure and not part of the disease. Right? I'm letting my temples relax, my jaw, the inside of my mouth. I'm making sure I let my bones show me where the earth is. What? Your bones show you the earth? Yes. You know? Then I'm going to be really grateful. I'm almost weepy right now that I can gently lift my sternum and change everything. The whole energy of it. Drop my shoulder blades down a little bit. Now, if I overdo it, if I get too excited, my mind likes the feeling and gets in the way. I'm not the observer anymore. I'm not the pure observer, the one that is pure absence and purely alive. I think that must be what samadhi must be. Pure absence and purely alive. So I'm noticing my inhalation, and damn it, my scoliosis makes my rib cage asymmetrical. My pelvic obliquity makes my right hip sit lower than my left, and I know I can't be perfect. How about you? Got some imperfections in your body? I suspect that you might. Because of all this, I roll my right shoulder forward, right? So I got to tuck in my left shoulder blade a little bit. Oh, there's my left leg because I tucked in my right shoulder blade. I don't know what your story is. Find your story. Find how you're congruent. Once I get there, I refine my bones, I repose, I relift my chest, and I start to get grateful. My breath feels better. Inside of my mouth is hollow like a cave. The lift in my chest is sparkling. I'm leaning forward on my sitting bones so I can know I'm leaning into life rather than using the emptiness to fall out of life. Equalizing the breath between each nostril into each lung, keeping aware of each sitting bone, using symmetry. I have tools at hand to honor the happening. So do you. Let go of your day. At this level, you better smile, even if it hurts. Prepare your mind to do yoga. Good, and then release. The release is a drop. The coming more overtly into the bandha is the transformation from the deadening part of the empty space to the activated part of the empty space. So start to lift your sternum and learn the balance between lifting your sternum and dropping your chin. Right? A lot of you drop the chin too much. A lot of you struggle to lift, less of you struggle to lift the sternum too much. But there's a really important balance in this action. It's one of the key actions of one of the bandhas, right? Is the balance between this and this. So as you lift the sternum and drop the chin, sometimes it helps me to think that simple interplay between sparkling life skyward from the earth and dropping the brain mind down in humility. I kind of think of the actions themselves as sacred, so I should study it. In this position of more alert rib cage and less overt shavasana, right? Can I still find congruence with what I had in shavasana? If you can do that, you can do every yoga pose there is. It's hard to stay patient. Good, and then release. One of the hard things about Iyengar yoga is that as you become more and more of your alignment and your precision, you become more and more aware of how imperfect you are, like of how messed up your body is, right? Especially the way fatigue appears. I remember one time, I don't know if I heard it on a video or whatever. I heard or read that Bika Singer says every cell breathes. Of course, the part of me that doesn't want to deal with that would say, well, what do you mean? Every cell has a little set of lungs? That'd be like a Western approach. Like, well, what's the mechanism? How would every cell breathe? Right. Except if the water inside the jar, if the light of consciousness touches all the edges, right? And actually your blood does vascularize everything. So every cell is actually breathing. Right. So I'm moving around because this serious stuff needs to get lighter. Right. So I'm making space in my low back. That's why, yogis that tell you, or yoga teachers that tell you that when you become in the present moment, you should just be happy and blissful. I want to hit the buzzer and say, no, actually, actually, the present has everything in it, right? It's got the whole kit and caboodle, right? So I hate when yoga teachers lie, or when I often defend adaptive students that have trouble breathing when they think, oh, breath will make you feel better. No, it doesn't actually always make you feel better. It doesn't. Sometimes breathing is really freaking hard. So don't tell me if I were getting it, I would actually like breathing all the time. No, it's hard. That's what it is, right? It's all of the above, right? So don't feel bad if you don't love the present moment all the time, right? Because it's got honesty means it's got everything in it, right? It's got your whole life in it. So I got my legs wide again because I'm trying to make sure the base of my spine, as you know, I think your spine's really important. So we're trying to open the energy a little bit so the mind can hear it, because the mind forgets all the time. The mind gets pulled to what's distracting. So I forget, especially on a Monday, I forget how much lightness there's here, right? So I'm getting my groins open and lifting my chest and being grateful that I can do this with my body, and my mind can like reconfigure itself to remember stuff, right? So I'm going back and forth with gravity switches, leaning into life. Remember, like it was last week where I was talking about find the tailbone out to each knee. And as you come forward, make sure that triangle, your spine sends energy out. This is what standing poses do, right? They often change leg positions on a practitioner. So the spine gets to express itself out into space, right? So you're doing some version of this when you're having your legs wide, changing gravity, pushing on your own legs. So what I want, because I can't move my legs and some of you all can, right? But because I can't move my legs directly, I can feel the prana often differently than you. So what I want is when I lean forward and change gravity, I'm pushing my legs out a little bit so my legs can receive the movement that my spine is getting, right? Because otherwise the spine moves and the legs don't respond in the same way. So I'm trying to make sure that I'm coordinating a change in gravity with expression through my legs, right? So even those of you that can move your legs, try not to move your legs as much, but try to make sure by pressing against your own legs as you change gravity, make sure that the bones receive, right? You just don't get caught up in flexing your muscles, right? So I'm actually making sure, and then I'm gonna rock a little bit because a little bit of vibration starts to crack the ice a little bit. Remember, the pure observer is going to see shavasana and action simultaneously, right? Right. And this is already happening. You're already part of it. You're not trying to watch as the pure observer. You're trying to become part of the whole. You're literally getting submerged in experience to be an observer, right? So we're going a little bit this way because we're waking up a little bit, trying to get that spine to wake up, right? I do this a lot because I crave it a lot, especially when I'm doing a more chair class, right? One of the things I like about teaching you all is I do this stuff with you. So now I'm coming down even farther. So and be careful, if it's not safe, don't do it, right? So I'm coming down farther. Because I've done a lot of Chaturanga Dandasana, upward facing dog, I can kind of feel when I come down farther, I got the ability to pop up into the pose, right? And then go back. Right? Now I'm trying to, as I come forward, hit down, extend from my tailbone out through each knee, find my heels, come down, activate. But I'm not cranking too much. So rather than trying to make it physical, this is one of the things I think is unfortunate about Chaturanga Dandasana, is that it's so physically challenging that the muscular action gets in the way. So what I want you to do is come forward. You're changing gravity. I know you're not doing Chaturanga Dandasana because your legs are wide, but that's kind of cool to do. Think if you could do Chaturanga Dandasana with your legs wide, right? Be a whole different pose. But okay, so I digress. So I'm here and I'm gonna pop. So Chaturanga Dandasana is like a push-up kind of, except it's more systemic. So you're down here. So I think about right here as being like face down. So I've done a lot of Chaturanga Dandasana on the mat. And so my feet, your nose is into the floor, right? And then all of a sudden you pop up. But remember, I've been trying to show you for a long time that that first step into action is either going to be violent or non-violent. So you have to learn from Shavasana, right? How to be non-violent. You have to learn from the ceasing how to be non-violent. Check that out. You have to learn from the ceasing how to be non-violent. And Gandhi needed to overcome his fear of death in order to realize nonviolence. His words, right? Okay, so now I'm here. And that first step to popping up into Chaturanga, which is very physical, needs to be nonviolent. And so keep your observer in Shavasana as the mind becomes active into action. Right? And you've got to balance the two. So you're forward, you're going to lift your chest, draw the shoulder blades back. Make sure you're trying to feel your legs, because the disadvantage of this position is that your legs aren't straight up behind you. Good. And then release. Okay, I got to like, okay, I'm way off into the weeds, but I'm liking it. Okay. So Chaturanga Dandasana, you're face down on the floor, right? And you put your arms like you're gonna do a push-up. And you pop up, you lift up a little bit, the whole body goes parallel to the floor, just a little bit off, like, and then you lift your chest, right? And so the thing that's an advantage about Chaturanga Dandasana on the mat is that it's less complicated because the spine stays in a vertical, in a straight line, right? You and I are trying to get the feeling of Chaturanga Dandasana with our legs wide and with a right angle. So we don't get the legs behind us in the same way. So is anyone follow what I'm saying? Are you nodding what I'm saying? Or are you kind of getting it a little bit? Okay. So and in a way, if you're on the mat, it's easier because you don't have to deal with the fact that you've got a right angle in the middle of Chaturanga that looks like a flat pose, right? It's not. Okay, so you're trying to figure out when you come forward how to activate the pose. And people get intimidated by the push-up part of it, so they get too physical, right? So that's why I tell people when I'm teaching it to people on the mat that can't lift up because they don't think they're strong enough, right? I say, I don't even care if you come off the mat. I care if you change the energy, right? And you're able to activate the movement in the pose, all right? So we're going to be, your legs are going to be slightly wide. You're coming forward. You wouldn't have to have your legs wide, but that's how I'm teaching it, right? And you're going to get that sense of activation. And I'm trying to tell you that sense of activation. And if you're doing Chaturanga, your collarbones would come forward, your shoulder blades would come back. You'd actually hit down through your heels while simultaneously drawing from your tailbone up through the top of your mouth. It's a very complicated pose, right? But there's a real sense of coming into the world with vigor in Chaturanga. But I'm asking you to come into the world with vigor and still be nonviolent. You with me, kind of? All this shit in a pose. And if you're part of the happening, it's already happened. So it's whether you can become an observer and be with the octopus rather than trying to film it. So there's this wonderful scene in the movie where the octopus reaches out and wants to hold hands with the guy, right? I'm sure it broke his heart wide open. He thought he was just there taking pictures, right? All right. Oh my gosh. There's an octopus in Chaturanga Dandasana? Yes, there is. Right? And it's trying to make friends with you, even though you're a little bit scared of it. All right, so my legs are wide. I'm going with my legs wide because I want a feeling of expansion in the pose. One thing that's hard about Chaturanga is that you're in a very narrow pipe. Well, so I kind of like having my legs wide when I'm getting my spine into Chaturanga because it makes me feel more expansive and I feel more hopeful when I'm expansive. All right, so I'm coming forward. So in the pose, when you're lying flat, you also lift the back of your knees, your whole back body's going up towards the ceiling. It's a version of it. I've always said Chaturanga's got an inversion of it in it, just like Virabhadrasana 3, but that's for another day, right? So come forward, right? So what I want is not for you just to lift up. So you're forward and you're about to snap into the pose. And that snap needs to be nonviolent. So slow it down a little bit. So you're forward. I have my forearms hit into my femur bones for grounding, right? So I'm forward and I'm going to lift my sternum, hit down through my tailbone, extend to the top of my head. Find my legs with the energy. I'm working hard right now. I'm having trouble talking. Good, and then release. So if you were just hanging out like you're at a spa right there, you missed what I was trying to show. Okay, so make it work, but make sure the first step is coming from Shavasana, right, into the activation. I got some tricks for you to figure out how to activate non-violently. Okay, so I love that there's a cat or a dog on someone's screen. It's a dog laying right in front of the screen. Look at that. That's awesome, right? So come forward, get prepared. You know it's coming. So I'm going to try to gracefully tuck my shoulder blade in because my shoulder's all messed up. And I got things, you got things in your story to make it more in alignment, right? Because remember, every cell breathes, right? So you're forward. And then activate the pose, lift the sternum, lift the elbows, drop the shoulder blades down. Good, and then release. So I don't want to work that one as hard. So because what I'm about to ask you to do, makes you go to Shavasana more kind of, or towards Shavasana. So in Chaturanga Dandasana, right, when you come up out into the push-up, a big breakthrough, at least in my opinion, in that pose, is when you realize that your whole back body needs to lift towards the ceiling. And it's not just your arms, it's your whole back body. We typically try to get a beginner to figure that out by telling them to lift the backs of their knees, right? But it's way more than that. All right, so this idea of back body presence. So as you come forward, you're already falling forward, right? And you're ready to activate your spine. But now have the patience to start to feel your back body, right? And let back body presence soften your jaw, right? So the back body presence opens the door towards the unceasing part of Shavasana. Okay, so now we're going to activate here in a second. But that first step towards lifting your sternum has to include your back body. So start to drop your shoulder blades, extend to the top of your head, lift the sternum, lift on the collarbones. Oop, I got to do it again because I got talking and I forgot about my back body. Trying it again. So I'm reposing. I'm coming through. I'm activating. Back body, Chaturanga. Good. And then release. So I'm hoping that you might be having the experience, like I am, that when you start to then activate, God, I hope you're having what I'm about to describe. Okay. When you start to activate your spine after you've included the back body, so you're having to be nonviolent, I hope you're feeling your legs more. That's one of the tricks to Chaturanga Dandasana. Your legs levitate, right? They go naturally, they're drawn towards the sky, even though your mind thinks it's about how hard you're pushing on the ground. Back body presence not only grounds, it levitates like melancholy, right? Try it again. So I'm forward. I've changed gravity. I've leaned into life. I'm going to make it part of the cure, right? The quiet energy. I'm going to make sure makes me smile because I forget it so much, to include back body presence in my activation. So I'm letting it in. I'm letting back body presence into my pose. It was always here. The observer always knew it. Then I'm going to activate, hit down through my sitting bones, lift my sternum, lift down the collarbones. But I'm trying to keep the back body presence with me. Here comes Chaturanga. Find my legs, extend down through my legs, activate my spine, balance the work in my arms. Good, and then release. Oh, I don't know about you, but I think you all should do that again. I just wiped myself out. Although this time I'm going to try the last one with my legs together. Right? Which I don't like as well when I'm trying to do this, but I feel more contained. So now we're going to go back to what I teach all the time, which is kind of I turn this into up dog a lot. Right? So I'm coming forward. Right? All this was sitting there waiting for you. Like if you wanted to go there. Thing about asana is that you're in a room with open doors if you want to walk through them, right? So here I'm forward. Now, instead of just going up and trying to make this a back bend like up dog, right? I'm going to keep it more like Chaturanga, right? And in order to prove to my mind I'm working hard, I tend to overwork here. But what I want to do is make sure that first step towards lifting my collarbones, right, is actually led by Shavasana, or led or done non-violently, right? So I'm going to start to activate. I wish you could see it. I'm activating now, but I'm extending. I'm trying to make sure the back body, my back skin, is working as much or releasing as my front body lengthens. Stretch out to the top of your head, drop your shoulder blades away. As you start doing these actions, feel both legs, especially if you feel one side more than the other. Feel both legs as you expand, lengthen your spine. Good, and then release. Take a break here for a second. So just so you know, I kind of believe this, not kind of, I believe what I'm about to say, that the energy, the Kundalini energy, whatever the magic energy in your spine, doesn't care whether you're neurologically intact. It has its own energy independently of it. So like if you start to extend your spine, the light of consciousness, the space that you activate between your vertebrae, goes through your whole body, whether your outer body can do anything with the side that doesn't work. So when I extend my spine in Chaturanga, there's an opportunity for me to feel and be aware of the light of consciousness in both legs, right? Because the spine, the energy at the core of the spine does not discriminate whether your outer body is completely functional, right? It just splashes the water. You just got to figure out how to be a container for it. So now you're forward. Remember, we're not up dogging, we're not cobraing, right? We're trying to stay in a straight line, right? And so you're forward, you're finding your sitting bones, you're finding the inside edge of your legs. You're gonna, when you activate, instead of back bending, you're gonna hit down through your sitting bones and stretch out to the top of your head. You're gonna extend your spine. Remember, I'm asking you to do it with more back body presence, meaning with more, in air quotes, shavasana, right? Because we want this to be nonviolent. And when you're nonviolent in your action, you're going to be a better observer of what's happening, right? All right, so you're forward here. I'm going to start the pose. I'm going to have to stop talking because this is going to be really hard for me. I'm going to work really hard here. Okay, so I'm trying to include all of me. Let the totality of my experience come into this asana. Quiet my mind down enough so it doesn't block all of what's happening to whatever extent I can. Then I'm going to, from back body to balance me, I'm going to start to feel and start to then engage the first step more non-violently and start into more action. Lengthen out the top of my head, hit through my sitting bones, broaden across my collarbones, broaden the space between my shoulder blades. Find each leg, find each foot, keep extending my spine, gripping down without disturbing the river. The muscles grip, but it doesn't have to stop the river. Breathe. Lift on your collarbones now and start to look up a little bit. Let in more light. Chaturanga. Engaged, complete, whole body chaturanga. Good, and then release. I know you're going to lie to me, but is it working at all for you? Yeah. Okay, good. So let's one thing about chaturanga is it's like you're doing yoga inside of a narrow pipe, right? Like, and so the water pressure gets high and the flow gets kind of high and you forget to have fun. And so arms wide, right? Lean one way, take up some space. But so that intensity of the narrow pipe that you were just in chaturanga, bring it out through your skin. Find the bottoms of your feet. So now we're going it's like up high, down low, like you're high-fiving the universe, right? It's the same energy, right? You just try, and now, when I change gravity, if I'm aware of, as the observer of Shavasana, everything changes. Oh my God, you mean little movements change the entire universe? Oh, yes, it does. And then it changes the universe without changing it. What? What? Hope you like your skin, right? Because damn, that's the part that touches the world, right? However you get big, let your skin get big, not just your muscles, right? Let your skin get big. But then as you're letting your skin touch everything, don't forget your bones, right? Don't forget your bones. They're all here together, skin and bones, right? Muscles, that's just the part we control more, right? You ever notice we have to observe and just like I have a cut right now and I'm watching my skin. It's on my hand, it's split open because it's winter. I got 2 different splits on my hand and I have to use hand sanitizer a lot. It's really joyful every time I go to catheterize myself. It's awesome, right? And I keep going, damn it, skin, will you just close faster? Could you just seal it up? Right? You don't get to control your skin the same way, except there's this really smart guy, because Engar said something, all knowledge comes through the skin. What? I thought my brain was in charge. Intelligence enters the poses through the skin. What? Think about it. Everything you actually do, even your eyeballs are actual skin, right? Your visual field's coming through skin. You don't learn that much if you don't interact with the world. So on this real literal level, all knowledge comes through the skin. I'm moving back and forth because I'm making sure my spine stays happy as I'm spouting out all these beads, right? So, but the thing is, in my experience, is that I need my bones to remind me where the earth is. So when I'm letting joy come more through my skin, right, I got to remind myself where my bones are. So I got earth and space. And then, you know, even your skin has a whole bunch of empty space in it, right? So bring your hands back to prayer or hands together. So I'm going to try to, like, I do this a lot lately because I've been learning a lot. So I think you can learn from a little thing. I think you can learn the whole universe, right? I think that Rumi might have said something really smart when he said, you're not a drop in the ocean, you're an entire ocean in a drop. So if you and I could realize the complete asana in a little tiny space, we've actually realized asana in the entire universe, right? All the spaces. That's one of the premises of adaptive yoga. So when I was first coming in, remember the 13-year-old boy, fast forward, comes into certain yoga teachers and they look at me and say, well, but how do you do Tadasana? How do you stand up? And I'm going, oh my God, what if I could learn the whole universe on one fiber of skin, right? You've missed the whole universe if you think I've got to stand up like you. Remember the 13-year-old boy is like, wait, I'm being told about a world that isn't exactly true. Try to live into your yogic realization. Trust your own practice. Just know your practice doesn't make you right. So here we are back to the skin on your palm, right? And I'm going to try to have, by learning to actually move from the center of my palm, I teach this all the time. From the center of my palm, opening that skin that touches the universe, touches the world, right? Outwardly. I'm going to try to open that skin and open the center of my chest. I'm going to let the empty spaces deliver the awareness. Because you're realizing the ceasing in order to realize asana. Shavasana makes the connection between the center of my skin on my palm and the center of my chest. Then I totally get why you'd want to connect the heel of your hands and you'd want to align the bones here. I totally get all that because you'd need the structure in order to have the skin on the palm open the center of your chest. Open the hope for me in my legs that's there without being able to move them. So all of a sudden, the thing about Shavasana is you start by realizing the pieces of your body, but then it unifies into a whole WHOLE. A singularity becomes the universe, right? So center of my palm, center of my chest, center of my brain, space between my sitting bone. They all move with the center of my palm. The world here isn't for your consumption. It's here for your realization. Good. And then release. So then prepare for Shavasana. So now you want to not try to make it, work on it to be more than just receiving, right? So trying to figure out and move my space around a little bit so I open up so the support coming into my empty spaces of my chair actually come in at every fiber of where I breathe. Remember, so the support enters, in my opinion, the empty spaces, but remember the empty spaces are in the muscles too. And they're in the space between the muscles and the bone, and the empty spaces are in the bones. And so you're coming back towards grounding or towards the earth, so the earth can actually permeate all the cells, right? So get in a position where you can receive your chair. And then lips together, teeth slightly apart. And now we're working quickly to undo the mind's attachment. So soften the organs of perception. Try to let go of the skin on the forehead, trying to relax the eyes. So let go of the skin on the forehead and around the temples. Let your eyes sink. Soften the jaw, the inside of the mouth, because you want the top of the spine to receive. When you're in a chair and you don't have your head underneath something, it's a little bit tougher. If you're on the floor and if you're in bed doing Shavasana, you can let your head receive more, but you've got to make it happen without the support. Center of your joints. There's empty space in your joints. Allow the empty space in your joints. Your ankles, your knees, your hips, your shoulders, your elbows, your wrists. Even into your hands and your toes. For me, it's easier for my hands, the joints in my hands. Everything exhales towards the support. Feel your breath. Don't change it. Practice awareness without change. It's hard. In that place, in that work, thank your body. Thank it again. It stays patient with your mind. Start to bring yourself back. Slightly deeper inhalation. Slightly longer exhalation. So although exhalation typically is where you start to activate, like in a pose, you let the inhalation come in. The exhalation also acknowledges the immensity of what surrounds you. The inhalation imbibes it, right? And on exhalation is when you typically move through gravity. But on this next exhalation, don't be afraid to let in the immensity. And you get to take up space. And you're reminded of that on the inhalation. All right, when you're ready, open your eyes. I can kind of get that the yogis maybe got to this level that they're trying to pass on to us from sitting in meditation. And I can kind of get that once you start to see the immensity, that you're not, it's not clear how you should move, right? But I'm really grateful that they started to think about asana more, trying to show that the same truth is there regardless of variation, right? Because in a way, asana just shows you that the realization has variation too, even though the realization is likely coming from what's unceasing, what's perpetual, right? So I'm grateful for asana, right? Because it's like, yeah, I get to make sure it makes it all the way through to life. And that level of awareness that becomes realization perhaps is part of the cure. Right. All right, everybody. That was and this would be a class where following my words doesn't nearly as matter as being able to see that there might have been a through line through all the beads, even if you're not sure about all the colors. Because I'm not sure. I might have put an errant bead on there a couple times. I don't know. That's how I strung the beads today. All right, so I'll stay on for reactions and comments, but have a good week. The plan is to be here next week. Hey, and by the way, Yoga Disability and Transformation is happening I do believe, I'm sorry to announce, I'm not sorry about this. Melinda is going to be, I'm going to talk to her about her experience on the chat, and also the newer student that was coming from New Zealand this last couple of months, Paige Murray, who's an adaptive yoga teacher in the UK, who's actually a student of Freddie's, was on this call. So come Wednesday, come young, invite people. It should be, we're exploring the differences and similarities between trauma, loss, and disability, the similarities and differences, and why asana might be able to help all three. It's easy to throw them into the same bucket, but they're not the same bucket, but they are the same bucket, for God's sakes. All right. See you hopefully Wednesday at 11 o'clock Central Time in the United States. All right, everybody.